The neon lights flickered overhead, casting an eerie blue glow across the otherwise dim courtroom. Jason Cole shifted uncomfortably in the hard metal chair reserved for defendants. His neural implant throbbed against his temple, a useless piece of technology, now that the court had temporarily suspended his network access privileges. The AI judge, a tall, translucent hologram of indeterminate gender, hovered behind the ancient oak bench, an odd juxtaposition of cutting-edge technology and Earth tradition. To its right sat three figures who had captured Jason's attention since they'd entered the room 2 hours ago, the Shiani princesses. Even with his basic xenobiology training, Jason found them mesmerizing. Their skin shimmered with an iridescence that seemed to pulse with their breathing. All three shared the characteristic high cheekbones and elongated eyes of their species, but each possessed distinct features that set them apart. The tallest wore her hair, if one could call the fibrous, color-shifting tendrils, hair, pulled back severely accentuating a face set in obvious disdain. The middle one studied him with open curiosity, tapping away at a holographic interface. The third, smallest in stature, scowled openly at him, one hand resting on what appeared to be a ceremonial weapon at her hip. Neural Implant Programmer, Jason Cole, Citizenship ID EA257891T. The AI judge's voice resonated through the chamber, perfectly balanced to reach every corner without being uncomfortably loud. You stand accused of violating Interplanetary Security Protocol 15.3 Section B. Paragraph 7, Unauthorized Access to Restricted Neural Network Functions. Jason swallowed hard. It wasn't exactly hacking, more like accessing backdoor functions that technically weren't illegal until 3 months ago, when the Interplanetary Council had rushed through new regulations. The evidence against you is conclusive. The AI continued its luminous form, shifting subtly as it processed the case files. Your actions, while not malicious in intent, according to psychological profile analysis, nevertheless represent a significant breach of interplanetary security protocols. The translator embedded in Jason's ear canal tickled as it processed the series of clicks and whistles coming from the tallest princess as she leaned over to whisper to her sisters. His neural implant, though restricted from network access, still functioned for basic translation. Primitive neural architecture, barely evolved past their companion species, was all he caught before the princess noticed his attention and fell silent. The AI judge raised a translucent hand. Before sentences passed, are there any statements the defendant wishes to make? Jason cleared his throat. Your Honor, The Council invokes Interplanetary Treaty Section 42.3, interrupted a new voice. All heads turned toward the back of the courtroom, where an elderly Shiani male stood. His ceremonial robes adorned with complex geometric patterns that seemed to move of their own accord, marked him as someone of great importance. Ambassador Krelthin, the AI, acknowledged its form, bowing slightly in deference. The court recognizes the Shiani consul. The ambassador moved forward with a fluid grace that belied his apparent age. Under Section 42.3 of the Interplanetary Treaty, this human's violation has created a diplomatic imbalance that threatens the peace between our worlds. Jason frowned. He'd studied the treaties extensively during his qualification exam standard procedure for anyone working with interplanetary neural networks, but couldn't recall any Section 42.3. Ambassador, the AI responded, Section 42.3 has not been invoked in 73 years. Are you certain this is the appropriate? I am, the ambassador cut in firmly. The requirements are met. The violation occurred on the quantum subnetwork level, where Shiani consciousness matrices reside during their developmental phase. Diplomatic restitution must be made. The three princesses were now sitting bolt upright, their expressions ranging from shock to outrage. The smallest one had her hand fully on her weapon now. As per Section 42.3, the ambassador continued, diplomatic balance can only be restored through the integration of bloodlines. The human male, Jason Cole, will marry my three granddaughters, Celia, Nora, and Tuan. The courtroom erupted into chaos. What? Jason shouted, jumping to his feet only to be forced back down by the gravitational restraints built into his chair. The smallest, Princess Tuan, he presumed was on her feet shouting in her native language too quickly for his translator to keep up. The middle one, either Celia or Nora, sat frozen, her eyes wide with surprise. The tallest simply closed her eyes, her expression suggesting she was contemplating the various ways she might end his existence. Silence, the AI judge commanded, and the room immediately fell quiet, a neural dampening field activating to enforce order. Ambassador, while the Council acknowledges your right to invoke Section 42.3, the Court must verify that all conditions are met. The defendant's violation must have directly impacted Shiani consciousness matrices, and the proposed remedy must be proportionate to the violation. My granddaughters were among the developing consciousness matrices in the affected subnetwork, the ambassador replied smoothly. Their educational imprinting was disrupted. While no permanent damage occurred, the potential was significant. The proportionality is appropriate. Jason found his voice again. This is absurd. I have rights as an Earth citizen. Earth is signatory to the treaty, Mr. Cole, the AI responded. If conditions are met, the treaty supersedes local law. I demand legal representation, Jason protested. You were offered representation at the beginning of these proceedings, and declined, the AI reminded him. Jason cursed inwardly. He'd declined because neural network violation cases were typically settled with fines or temporary network restrictions. Nobody had mentioned forced marriage to alien royalty. The AI judge's form shifted as it processed the new information. The court has verified Ambassador Krelthun's claims. The conditions for Section 42.3 are indeed met. Jason Cole, you are hereby sentenced to marry the Shiani royal granddaughters, Celia, Nora, and Tuan, as restitution for your violation of interplanetary security protocols. The ceremony will take place within 7 Earth days. The tallest princess finally spoke, her voice cold and precise. Grandfather, this is unnecessary. Our educational matrices have already been recalibrated. Celia, the ambassador addressed her. This is not about your education. This is about maintaining the balance between our worlds. The treaty is clear. I will not marry a primitive human, hissed Tuan, the smallest princess, her hand still on her weapon. You will fulfill your royal obligations, the ambassador replied sternly. All 3 of you. The council has spoken. The middle princess Nora, by process of elimination, had yet to speak. She was studying Jason with an unsettling intensity, as if he were a particularly interesting specimen in a laboratory. This court session is adjourned, the AI judge declared. Jason Cole, you are remanded to home confinement until the ceremony. Your digital access will remain restricted to prevent further violations. A cultural integration specialist will contact you to prepare you for the ceremony. The gravitational restraints on Jason's chair released, but he remained seated, too stunned to move. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Cole to his residence, the AI instructed. As the human bailiff approached, Jason finally found his legs and stood, his mind racing to process what had just happened. As he was led from the courtroom, he caught one last glimpse of his future brides. Celia, the tallest, had already turned away, her posture rigid with displeasure. Tuan was engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument with her grandfather. And Nora was still watching him, her head tilted slightly to one side, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. The bailiff's hand on his shoulder guided him through the doorway and into a future he could never have imagined. The home confinement the court had sentenced him to was a joke. Jason paced his apartment's small living area, feeling like a caged animal. He'd been de-digitized, his neural implants' access to any networks, severed his apartment's smart systems, disabled even his basic communication privileges, restricted to emergency services only. He paused at the window, staring out at the sprawling megacity of New Shanghai. Flying vehicles zipped between towering skyscrapers, adorned with massive holographic advertisements. From his 40th floor apartment, the people on the elevated walkways below looked like scurrying insects. everything out there continued as normal, while his life had been turned upside down. A soft knock on his door startled him. He wasn't expecting visitors. The court hadn't mentioned allowing any. Cautiously, he approached the door. "Who is it?" he called. "It's Mira, your neighbor," came the reply. "I brought food. The building AI told me your meal delivery service was suspended." Jason hesitated. He barely knew Mira. She'd moved in across the hall just a few weeks ago. But his stomach rumbled, reminding him he hadn't eaten since before the court session that morning. He pressed his palm against the reader, and the door slid open to reveal a slender woman with warm brown skin and striking green eyes. She was holding a container that emitted a spicy, enticing aroma. "I made too much curry," she said with a small smile. "Thought you might be hungry." "That's very kind of you," Jason replied, stepping back to let her in. "How did you know about my situation?" Mira set the container down on his kitchen counter. "News travels fast. Human forced to marry alien princesses makes for quite a headline." Jason groaned, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "It's already in the news." "Top story on every feed," she confirmed, opening his cupboards with the familiarity of someone who'd been in his apartment before, though she hadn't. She located plates and began serving the curry. "Quite the predicament you've found yourself in." "That's putting it mildly," he muttered, sinking onto a stool at the counter. "I didn't even do anything wrong. Not really. The regulations changed, but the backdoor functions I was using were still listed as accessible in the old codex. It wasn't malicious." "Intent doesn't always matter in interplanetary law," Mira remarked, sliding a plate toward him. "Here, eat." The curry was delicious, rich with spices, and perfectly balanced between heat and flavor. Jason hadn't realized how hungry he was until the first bite hit his tongue. "This is amazing," he said between mouthfuls. Mira smiled, taking a seat across from him. "Old family recipe. So what's your plan?" Plan." Jason laughed bitterly. "What plan could I possibly have? I've been de-digitized, sentenced to marry 3 alien princesses, who clearly hate me, and will probably be shipped off to their planet after the ceremony. My life as I knew it is over." "That's a rather defeatist attitude," Mira observed calmly. "You're a neural implant programmer, one of the best according to your case file. Surely you can think of something." Jason paused mid-bite. "My case file. How would you have access to that?" Mira's expression remained placid. "I have my sources. The point is, you're not without resources, Jason. De-digitized doesn't mean helpless." He studied her more carefully now. She looked human, but there was something off. Her movements were too precise, her expressions too measured. "You're not fully human, are you?" he asked quietly. A smile spread across her face, a genuine one this time. "Very observant. I'm a hybrid. Biological components with AI enhancement. We're still relatively rare on Earth, though, common enough in the outer colonies." Jason's mind raced with implications. Hybrids existed in a legal gray area, not bound by the same restrictions as pure AI, but granted more access privileges than regular humans in many systems. "You could help me," he realized aloud. "I could," she agreed. "But the question is, what do you want help with? Escaping your sentence would make you a fugitive across 17 systems. Fighting it legally would take years. Or what? Or you could approach this from a different angle." Mira leaned forward. "The Shiani are a fascinating species. Their culture, their technology particularly, their consciousness transfer capabilities are centuries ahead of Earth's. A marriage alliance, while not what you planned, could offer opportunities you've never imagined." Jason pushed his plate away. His appetite suddenly diminished. "You're suggesting I just accept this forced marriage? Become what, some kind of royal consort to alien princesses who can't stand the sight of me?" "I'm suggesting you see this as more than a punishment," Mira replied. "The Shiani don't do anything without multiple layers of purpose. There's more to this arrangement than simple restitution for your alleged crime." "What do you mean?" Mira stood gathering their plates. That's for you to discover. But you might want to start by learning about your brides-to-be. Knowledge is power, after all. She reached into her pocket and placed a small object on the counter, a data crystal glowing with a soft blue light. This contains profiles on the 3 princesses, public information, only nothing classified. It also has a basic introduction to Xiani culture and customs. Your neural implant can still process offline data, yes. Jason nodded, picking up the crystal. Yes, though the court restricted any external connectivity. That crystal is self-contained, Mira assured him. No connectivity required. Why are you helping me? Jason asked, suddenly suspicious. Mira paused at the door, looking back at him with those unnaturally green eyes. Let's just say I have a vested interest in interspecies harmony, and I've always had a soft spot for underdogs. With that cryptic statement, she left the door sliding shut behind her. Jason stared at the data crystal in his palm. Whatever game was being played, he was clearly a pawn. But perhaps with the right information he could at least understand the board. He pressed the crystal against his neural implant port. Knowledge flooded his mind. The cultural integration specialist turned out to be a balding man named Thomas Whitfield, who seemed perpetually out of breath, despite doing nothing more strenuous than talking. He arrived at Jason's apartment the next morning, with an array of holographic displays and sample garments. The ceremony will blend Earth and Xiani traditions, Whitfield explained, projecting images of elaborate ceremonial clothing. You'll need to memorize several ritual phrases in the Xiani High Tongue. Their translator technology is disabled during sacred ceremonies. Jason, who had spent most of the night absorbing information from Mira's data, Crystal nodded. The tonal quality is important, not just the words themselves. Xiani language carries emotional resonance through subtle frequency variations. Whitfield looked surprised. Yes, that's correct. You've been studying... I thought I should understand what I'm getting into, Jason replied. Commendable, Whitfield said, though he didn't sound particularly impressed. Now, regarding the post-ceremony protocols. A sharp knock interrupted him. Before Jason could respond, the door slid open and Princess Celia strode in, followed by 2 stern-looking Xiani guards. Whitfield immediately dropped into a deep bow. Your Highness, we weren't expecting. Leave us, Celia commanded, her voice cool and authoritative. But the preparations... We'll continue later. She fixed him with a gaze that brooked no argument. Whitfield gathered his materials with fumbling haste and scurried out, leaving Jason alone with the princess and her guards. Celia was even more imposing up close. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her iridescent skin shifting between shades of blue and violet. Her hair, those fibrous tendrils, was arranged in an intricate pattern that seemed to defy gravity. She wore a form-fitting outfit that appeared to be made of some metallic fabric that moved like liquid with her every gesture. You will come with me, she stated, not a request but a command. Am I allowed to leave my apartment? Jason asked. The court ordered home confinement. One of the guards stepped forward, attaching a small device to Jason's neural implant. It beeped once, then glowed green. Temporary override. Your movements will be tracked, Celia explained. Follow me. Seeing little choice, Jason followed her into the hallway. As they passed Mira's door, he glanced at it, wondering if his mysterious neighbor was watching. They took the private elevator to the rooftop landing pad, where a sleek Xiani shuttle waited. Its organic-looking design reminded Jason of a manta ray, smooth and elegant with no visible seams or propulsion systems. Where are we going? He asked as they boarded. To my research facility, Celia replied, taking a seat across from him in the luxurious cabin. The guards remained standing, their attention fixed on Jason. I wish to understand what manner of human would interfere with our consciousness matrices. The shuttle lifted off, silently accelerating with such smoothness that Jason would not have known they were moving if not for the view through the transparent ceiling. New Shanghai fell away beneath them, the sprawling megacity, shrinking rapidly as they gained altitude. It wasn't intentional, Jason said. I was using development backdoors that were supposed to be accessible. Intent is irrelevant, Celia responded, studying him with clinical detachment. The effect is what matters. Your actions disrupted the educational imprinting of 17 developing consciousness matrices, including those of myself and my sisters. Jason frowned. The court said no permanent damage occurred. Permanent is a relative term when discussing consciousness, she said. The disruption created anomalies, thought patterns that would not normally have emerged. What kind of anomalies? Celia's tendrils shifted, a sign of discomfort, or perhaps annoyance. Interest in obsolete linguistic forms, attraction to mathematical chaos patterns, curiosity about Earth's pre-space cultural development. Jason raised an eyebrow. Those don't sound particularly harmful. They are deviations from the intended educational parameters, she said firmly. In Xiani culture, such deviations can lead to societal imbalance. So this marriage, it's what a way to study the source of the contamination. Celia's expression shifted subtly. That is my interest, yes. My sisters have their own reasons for agreeing to this arrangement. Agreeing, Jason couldn't help but laugh. Your sister Tuan looked ready to gut me with that ceremonial weapon of hers. Tuan expresses her displeasure physically. It does not mean she disagrees with the necessity of our union. Celia leaned forward slightly. You possess knowledge, Jason Cole. Knowledge that was not supposed to be accessible to you. Knowledge that has somehow transferred to our consciousness matrices. I intend to discover how this occurred. The shuttle began to descend, approaching a massive structure floating in the East China Sea. It resembled a giant lotus flower, its petals housing various research facilities and laboratories. Welcome to the Xiani Earth Science Enclave, Celia said as they docked. Few humans have ever been permitted inside. Jason followed her through the airlock and into a corridor that seemed to be alive. The walls pulsed with soft light, responding to their presence. The air carried a sweet, slightly metallic scent. You will submit to a series of non-invasive scans, Celia informed him as they walked. We will map your neural pathways, analyze your thought patterns, and determine the source of the consciousness transfer. And if I refuse? Celia stopped, turning to face him fully. You misunderstand your position, human. This is not a request. This is part of your sentence. Cooperation will make the process less uncomfortable, but it will proceed regardless of your consent. Jason felt a chill at her words. I thought I was marrying into the family, not becoming a lab rat. Something flickered across Celia's face, surprise perhaps. The marriage is diplomatic. The research is practical. One does not preclude the other. They entered a large circular chamber, dominated by a complex apparatus in the center, a chair surrounded by delicate arcing instruments that reminded Jason of a massive neural implant port. Please remove your outer garments and take a seat, Celia instructed, moving to a control panel. Jason hesitated, then removed his jacket and shirt, leaving only his pants. As he approached the chair, he noticed Celia's gaze fix on his exposed upper body, her tendrils suddenly going still. Is something wrong? He asked. She approached him slowly, her eyes never leaving his chest. That marking, what is it? Jason glanced down at the small tattoo over his heart, a stylized dragon wrapped around a quantum formula, done in luminescent ink, that seemed to shift and move under certain light. Just a tattoo. Got it when I completed my neural programming certification. It's a symbol of balance. Celia interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. The quantum dragon, symbol of the order of resets. Jason frowned. The what? Before she could answer, alarms blared throughout the facility. The guards immediately moved to flank Celia, their weapons drawn. Security breach, announced a calm voice over the facility's communication system. Unknown entities have penetrated levels 3 through 7. All personnel implement containment protocol Epsilon. Celia's expression hardened. It appears our session will have to wait, she turned to the guards. Take him to secure holding. Protect him at all costs. What's happening? Jason demanded, as the guards seized his arms. Celia was already moving toward the exit, her fingers dancing across a portable interface. "They've found you sooner than expected. The order has come for you." "The order? What order?" But she was gone, the door sealing behind her, leaving Jason alone with his guards, and a growing sense that he was caught in the middle of something far more complex than a simple treaty violation. The secure holding room turned out to be little more than a glorified closet, a small windowless chamber, with a single bench, and no visible exit once the door sealed seamlessly into the wall. The guards had practically thrown him inside, before rushing off to deal with the security breach. Jason paced the tiny space, still shirtless, and increasingly frustrated. Something about his tattoo had triggered Celia's recognition, connecting him to some order of resets he'd never heard of. And now that same order had apparently breached a secure Shiani facility, possibly looking for him. "This is insane," he muttered to himself. 3 days ago, my biggest problem was debugging neural interface code. A faint vibration ran through the floor, followed by the distant sound of an explosion. Whatever was happening out there, it was escalating. Jason examined the walls, looking for any control panel or weak point. The room was a perfect oval, the surfaces smooth and featureless. His neural implant, still restricted from network access, couldn't interface with any facility systems. He was considering whether to simply shout for help when a section of the wall suddenly rippled and parted, revealing a familiar figure. "Mira," Jason stared in disbelief. "No time to explain," she said urgently, tossing him a shirt and what appeared to be a weapon. "Put these on and follow me. Stay close and do exactly as I say." Jason pulled on the shirt, a form-fitting garment, made of the same metallic fabric the Shiani seemed to favor. The weapon was unlike anything he'd seen before. Not a gun or a blade, but something in between, with a curved handle and a sharp edge that glowed faintly blue. "What is this?" he asked, holding it awkwardly. "Quantum disruptor. Point and think about the target destabilizing. It responds to neural commands." Mira peered into the corridor. "Clear. Let's move." They slipped out of the holding room and into a corridor filled with swirling emergency lights. The facility's living walls pulsed with red warnings, and in the distance, Jason could hear shouting and the unmistakable sounds of combat. "Who's attacking?" he whispered, as they hurried along Mira, leading them through a series of turns that seemed to be taking them away from the main conflict. "The Order of Resets," she replied tersely. "They're here for you." "Why, what is this order?" Celia recognized my tattoo, said it was their symbol. Mira paused at an intersection, checking both directions before proceeding. "The Order of Resets is an interplanetary peacekeeping force originally founded to maintain balance between biological and digital entities. They've become corrupted over time now, serving as little more than enforcers for whoever pays the highest price." She glanced back at him. "That tattoo of yours, where did you get it exactly?" "A parlor in the university district. The artist said it represented balance in the quantum realm." Jason frowned. "Are you saying it has some greater significance?" "Much greater," Mira confirmed. "That symbol hasn't been seen in public for decades. It marks the original founders of the Order, those with the ability to reset imbalanced systems." Another explosion, closer this time, shook the corridor. A section of the ceiling collapsed behind them, blocking their retreat. "We need to move faster," Mira urged. They rounded a corner and came face to face with 3 figures in sleek black armor. Their helmets concealed their species, but their weapons, identical to the one Jason now held, identified them as members of the attacking force. "Target acquired," one of them announced, raising their weapon. Mira moved with startling speed, her form blurring as she closed the distance. Before Jason could even process what was happening, 2 of the attackers were down, their armor smoking from precise strikes. The third managed to fire a shot that Mira barely dodged the energy blast, leaving a smoking hole in the wall. "Use your weapon!" Mira shouted to Jason. Acting on instinct, Jason raised the quantum disruptor, focusing his thoughts as Mira had instructed. The weapon pulsed, and a wave of energy shot forth, striking the remaining attacker. The figure's armor seemed to ripple, parts of it phasing in and out of reality before the entire suit collapsed in on itself, leaving only a small pile of component particles on the floor. Jason stared in horror at what he'd done. Did I just disassemble their armor at the quantum level? Yes. They're fine inside, just naked and unconscious. Mira grabbed his arm. Come on. The shuttle bay is this way. They continued through the facility, encountering more signs of battle, but managing to avoid direct confrontation. At one point, they passed a laboratory where Shiani scientists were frantically destroying data, while defenders held off attackers at the door. Why is this happening? Jason demanded as they ducked into a maintenance shaft. What do they want with me? They want to eliminate you, Mira replied bluntly, crawling ahead of him through the narrow space. Your neural interface work has brought you dangerously close to rediscovering the original purpose of the Order. Kane Mercer, their current leader, can't allow that. Rediscovering, I don't know anything about this Order. Not consciously, no. But your neural programming techniques, they mirror the founding principles of the Order. The way you've mapped consciousness pathways, the backdoor functions you've accessed. You've been unknowingly reconstructing their methods. They emerged from the shaft into what appeared to be a shuttle bay, though most of the vessels had already departed. A single Shiani shuttle remained, its boarding ramp extended. There's our exit, Mira said, leading him toward it. Wait, Jason pulled back. The princesses Celia, Nora, Tuan, are they safe? We can't just leave them. Mira gave him an odd look. Concerned for your reluctant brides already. They didn't ask for this situation any more than I did, he replied. And whatever's happening, they seem to be caught in the middle too. A slow clapping sound echoed through the shuttle bay. Jason and Mira turned to see a tall, imposing human male, standing at the far entrance flanked by armed soldiers. Unlike the attackers they'd encountered earlier, this man wore no helmet, revealing a face marked with old scars and cybernetic enhancements around his eyes. How touching, the man said, his voice carrying easily across the space. The programmer develops a conscience. Kane Mercer, Mira hissed, positioning herself between Jason and the newcomer. The hybrid protector, Mercer, acknowledged with a mocking bow. I should have known you'd be involved. Always showing up when balance is threatened. The only threat to balance here is you, Mercer, Mira replied. You've perverted the Order's purpose. Mercer smiled coldly. I've adapted it to modern realities. Something the Founders failed to do. His gaze shifted to Jason. Speaking of Founders, the resemblance is remarkable. Not just the face, but the neural patterns too. No wonder the old protocols responded to your probing. Jason glanced at Mira in confusion. What is he talking about? Later, she whispered. Be ready to run for the shuttle on my signal. Mercer began walking toward them, his soldiers remaining at the entrance. You don't even know what you are, do you, Jason Cole? What you represent? Why your neural architecture can interface with systems no human should be able to access. He laughed. The Shiani knew. That's why they invoked that obscure treaty clause to bind you to them before I could find you. Enough talking, Mira said sharply. She raised her hand, and to Jason's astonishment, her fingers transformed, extending into metallic claws. Jason, go. I'll hold them off. I'm not leaving you, he protested. How noble, Mercer smirked. But ultimately futile. The Order has already taken control of this facility. The princesses are in our custody. There's nowhere for either of you to run. As if to emphasize his point, the remaining shuttle's engines suddenly powered down its boarding ramp, retracting. The Shiani made a diplomatic error invoking that treaty. Mercer continued conversationally. They exposed you before you were ready, before you understood your potential. I should thank them, really. Saved me the trouble of finding you myself. What do you want from me? Jason demanded. Want from you? Mercer laughed. Oh, I don't want anything from you. I want you eliminated. Your existence threatens everything I've built. He drew a weapon, similar to Jason's quantum disruptor, but larger, more ornate. The Order cannot have two masters. He fired. Time seemed to slow. Jason saw the energy blast coming toward him, a rippling distortion in the air. He saw Mira moving to intercept too slowly. He saw his own hand raising the quantum disruptor, not to fire, but almost as if offering it to the incoming blast. When the energies met, the resulting explosion threw everyone off their feet. Jason felt himself flying backward, striking the wall hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. Through blurred vision, he saw Mercer also struggling to rise his fancy weapon, now a melted mass of components. The quantum recognition circuit, Mira gasped, pulling herself up beside Jason. Your disruptor recognized the signature of Mercer's weapon. They canceled each other out. Kill them! Mercer roared to his soldiers, who were now pouring into the shuttle bay. Kill them now! Jason helped Mira to her feet. They were cornered, outnumbered, with no clear escape route. Any ideas? He asked, gripping the now useless quantum disruptor. Mira's eyes darted around the bay, assessing. Just one, but you're not going to like it. She pointed to a maintenance door near their position. That leads to the facility's waste disposal system. It empties directly into the sea. You want us to jump into the garbage? I want us to live, she corrected. I can protect us from the water pressure and temperature, but it won't be pleasant. The first energy blasts from the soldiers' weapons struck near their position, leaving smoking craters in the wall. Garbage it is, Jason decided. They made a dash for the maintenance door, dodging weapons fire. Mira's hand morphed again, her fingers becoming tools that quickly bypassed the door's security. It slid open, revealing a dark chute beyond. Ladies first, Jason quipped nervously. Mira gave him a look that was half exasperation, half admiration. Together, she said, grabbing his hand. They jumped into the darkness, just as a barrage of energy blasts obliterated the doorway behind them. The fall seemed endless, a disorienting tumble through pitch blackness. Jason clung to Mira's hand, the only anchor in the void. Then came the splash, icy seawater, enveloping them with shocking force. True to her word, Mira's body began to change, extending a protective membrane around them both that kept the crushing pressure at bay. Through the translucent barrier, Jason could see they were sinking rapidly, the massive lotus-shaped facility, growing smaller above them. Strange bioluminescent creatures darted past, curious about the unusual intruders in their domain. Can they track us? Jason asked, his voice sounding odd within the membrane. Not easily, Mira replied. Her form had partially merged with the protective barrier, giving her an ethereal appearance. The sea disrupts most standard tracking systems, and I'm dampening our energy signatures. What happens now? Now we wait until we're far enough from the facility, then make our way to the surface, and find transportation back to the mainland. Jason stared at her, this being who had risked everything to help him. Who are you really? And why are you helping me? Mira's expression softened. Let's just say I have a vested interest in seeing the order restored to its original purpose. As for what I am, she hesitated. I'm a guardian of balance, one of the last of my kind. And me. What did Mercer mean about founders and neural architecture? She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. You've heard of genetic memory, the theory that certain experiences, knowledge, even personalities can be passed down through DNA? Jason nodded. It's been largely debunked for humans, though some species like the Shiani exhibit traits of generational memory transfer. It hasn't been debunked, it's been suppressed. Humans are quite capable of genetic memory transfer, especially when certain conditions are met. Mira's eyes seemed to glow brighter in the dark water. You, Jason Cole, carry the genetic memory of one of the Order's founders, perhaps the most important one. Your neural architecture, your innate understanding of consciousness pathways. Even that tattoo you were drawn to, they're all manifestations of memories embedded in your DNA. Jason felt a chill that had nothing to do with the surrounding seawater. You're saying I'm, what, the reincarnation of some ancient peacekeeper? Not reincarnation, continuation. A genetic vessel carrying forward a crucial perspective that the universe needs to maintain balance. She gave him a small smile. Why do you think the Shiani were so quick to invoke that marriage clause? They recognized what you are. They want to bind that power to their lineage. The implications were overwhelming. Jason closed his eyes, trying to process everything. When he opened them again, he asked the question that had been nagging at him since the courthouse. The princesses, are they in danger from Mercer? He won't harm them directly that would trigger interplanetary war. But he'll use them to get to you. Mira began guiding their membrane-enclosed forms, horizontally moving them away from the facility's location. Which means we need to get to them first. How we have no weapons, no transportation, and apparently an interplanetary peacekeeping force wants me dead. We have something better than weapons, Mira replied. We have knowledge they don't think you possess. Knowledge that's been dormant in your genetic memory, waiting for the right trigger to awaken it. And what's the trigger? Mira's smile turned enigmatic. You've already experienced it. The quantum disruption when your weapon met Mercer's. It started a cascade effect in your neural pathways. Even now, your brain is reorganizing, accessing memories that aren't technically yours, but are still part of you. As if responding to her words, Jason felt a strange sensation spreading from his neural implant, throughout his body, a warmth, a familiarity, like returning to a home he'd never known he had. Images flashed through his mind, faces he'd never seen, places he'd never visited, knowledge he'd never learned. I see patterns, he whispered. Neural networks, consciousness matrices, quantum entanglement points. So clear, so obvious. How did I never see them before? Because you weren't ready, Mira answered simply. But now I think you are. And just in time we've reached a safe distance, she pointed upward. Ready to return to the world founder. The title should have felt foreign, ridiculous. Instead, it settled over him like a well-worn garment, comfortable and right. Ready, he confirmed. We have princesses to rescue and an order to reset. Mira's membrane contracted, then propelled them upward with surprising speed. As they rose toward the surface, Jason felt the genetic memories continuing to unfold within him, preparing him for what was to come. By the time they breached the surface, he was no longer just Jason Cole, neural implant programmer. He was something more, a continuation of a legacy he was only beginning to understand. The Tokyo shoreline glittered with neon and holographic advertisements, a stark contrast to the natural beauty of Mount Fuji looming in the background. Jason and Mira had made their way to Japan after emerging from the East China Sea, avoiding the major transportation hubs where Mercer's people would be watching. They sat in a small ramen shop in the Shinjuku district, huddled over steaming bowls. Jason had spent the past hours absorbing the flood of genetic memories as they surfaced, each revelation more astonishing than the last. The order was created to maintain balance between biological and digital evolution, he murmured, keeping his voice low, despite the privacy field Mira had established around their table. As consciousness began transferring to digital matrices, someone needed to ensure neither realm dominated the other. Mira nodded, slurping noodles with surprising delicacy, given her partially mechanical nature. The founders, 7 beings from different species, who recognized the potential crisis, established protocols that would prevent imbalance. Your genetic ancestor was the human representative, Alexander Cole. Jason said the name rising unbidden from his newly accessible memories. He developed the quantum reset algorithms that could rebalance systems that had gone too far in either direction. Exactly. The dragon tattoo was their symbol, a creature of myth, representing the bridge between physical and ethereal realms. Mira set down her chopsticks. Over time, the Order's purpose became corrupted. Instead of maintaining balance, they began enforcing stagnation, preventing natural evolution in both realms. And Mercer, where does he fit in? Kane Mercer was once a promising recruit decades ago. He discovered that controlling the reset points gave him immense power. He could essentially hold entire digital civilizations hostage. Her expression darkened. The remaining founders tried to stop him, but he had already secured too much influence. One by one, they were eliminated or forced into hiding. Jason absently touched the tattoo on his chest, feeling a strange resonance with the quantum formula it contained. And my ancestor, what happened to him? He implemented a final safeguard encoding his consciousness patterns into his DNA, ensuring they would resurface generations later when the balance was again threatened. Mira gave him a significant look. In you, Jason. But why the marriage to the Shiani princesses? How does that fit in? The Shiani are one of the few species that have achieved true balance between biological and digital existence. Their consciousness matrices aren't just educational tools, they're testing grounds for consciousness transfer. Mira leaned forward. When you access those backdoor functions, you weren't just breaching security protocols. You were unknowingly implementing Alexander Cole's reset algorithms in their consciousness matrices. So the princesses have been partially reset to original balance parameters. Their grandfather recognized what was happening and moved to protect both them and you by invoking the marriage clause. It places you under Shiani diplomatic protection, or it would have if Mercer hadn't intervened. Jason rubbed his temples. The genetic memories were integrating more smoothly now, but the sheer volume of information was overwhelming. We need to find them, not just because Mercer is using them as bait, but because together we might actually be able to reset the order. My thoughts exactly, Mira agreed. But we'll need help. She pulled out a small communication device, not standard Earth tech, but something more advanced. I've contacted some old associates, people who remember what the order was meant to be. Can they be trusted? As much as anyone can be in times like these, she replied pragmatically. They'll meet us at the old temple in Asakusa in 2 hours. Until then, we should rest. You need time to process more of the memories. Jason nodded, feeling a bone-deep weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. What about you? You never fully explained what you are or how you're connected to all this. Mira's expression turned wistful. I am the last creation of the founders before they were scattered, a hybrid designed to maintain balance on the individual level. Part biological, part digital, with the ability to adapt to either realm as needed. You're a reset point in yourself, Jason realized. In a manner of speaking, she smiled. I've been watching over you for years, waiting for the memories to surface. The court case just accelerated the timeline. Years, Jason frowned. But you only moved in across the hall a few weeks ago. That particular body and identity, yes. But I've been nearby in various forms since you were in university. She shrugged at his startled expression. Guardian of balance, remember. It's literally what I was created for. Before Jason could respond, the shop's door slid open, admitting a group of tourists. Nothing about them seemed immediately threatening, but Mira stiffened. We need to go, she whispered. Now, back exit. They abandoned their half-eaten ramen and slipped through the kitchen, the chef barely glancing up as Mira flashed some kind of authorization. The back door led to a narrow alley lined with recycling units and delivery drones. What is it? Jason asked as they hurried down the alley. Facial recognition alert on the public networks. Mercer's people have tagged us as terrorists. Mira led him through a maze of back streets, avoiding the main thoroughfares with their omnipresent surveillance. We need to change our appearance before meeting the others. They ducked into a small shop with a sign displaying only a simple icon of a mask. Inside, an elderly Japanese woman sat behind a counter, various facial prosthetics and identity-obscuring devices arrayed on the walls. Mira-san, the woman greeted them with a slight bow. It has been many years. Too many, Hanako, Mira replied, returning the bow. We need your services urgently. The usual package, Hanako asked, already moving to a back room. Plus a quantum mask for my friend, full spectrum. Hanako paused, eyeing Jason with new interest. A quantum mask, those are reserved for... Her eyes widened slightly as she noticed his tattoo visible through the torn fabric of his shirt. I see. Come. In the back room, Jason submitted to Hanako's expert ministrations. Unlike crude physical disguises, her work involved ultra-thin molecular films that adhered to skin-altering appearance at the quantum level, undetectable by standard scanners and visual recognition systems. As she worked, Jason felt more memories surfacing, integrating with his consciousness, like puzzle pieces finding their places. The Order's founding principles, the reset protocols, the quantum balance theory, all becoming as familiar to him as his own neural programming knowledge. "You're taking this remarkably well," Mira observed her own appearance, now subtly altered to present as a middle-aged Japanese businessman. "Most people would be having a breakdown about now." "I'm not most people, apparently," Jason replied dryly. "Besides, it feels right. Like I've been sleepwalking through my life until now, and I'm finally awake." Hanako applied the final touches to his disguise. Looking in the mirror, Jason barely recognized himself. His features had been reshaped to appear older. His skin tone darkened his hair, now gray, and styled differently. Even his height seemed altered, though that was likely a perceptual trick, rather than physical change. "The quantum mask will hold for approximately 72 hours, Hanako informed him. "After that, the molecular bonds will begin to degrade. Return before then, if you require renewal." "Thank you," Jason said, bowing respectfully. As they prepared to leave, Hanako pressed something into his hand, a small pendant in the shape of a dragon, similar to his tattoo, but more intricate. "For luck," she said with a knowing smile. "May balance be restored." Back on the streets, now effectively invisible to standard surveillance, they made their way toward Asakusa. The ancient temple complex stood in stark contrast to the ultra-modern city surrounding it, a reminder of Japan's enduring cultural heritage. "The people we're meeting," Jason asked, as they approached the temple grounds, "were they part of the original order?" "Descendants and disciples," Mira replied. "Like you, some carry genetic memories of the founders. Others are simply believers in the original mission, who have worked in secret to preserve what they could of the true teachings." They passed under the massive red gate, the Thunder Gate, as it was known to tourists, and entered the temple complex. Despite the late hour, a few visitors still wandered the grounds, taking in the spiritual atmosphere. Mira led him to a small, secondary shrine, easily overlooked by casual visitors. 3 figures waited there, each appearing to be ordinary tourists, but carrying themselves with the unmistakable alertness of trained operatives. "The water flows both ways," Mira said as they approached. "Yet remains itself," replied the eldest of the 3, an Asian woman who appeared to be in her 60s. Mira made quick introductions. Dr. Lin Wei, a quantum physicist from New Beijing. Kato, a former neural security operative from Mars Colony. And Elias, a young man whose species wasn't immediately apparent, but whose eyes held ancient wisdom. "You've found him," Dr. Lin said, studying Jason with intense interest. "After all these years, the genetic patterns are unmistakable." "He's awakening rapidly," Mira confirmed. "The Order made their move at the Shiani facility. They have the princesses." "We know," Kato said grimly. "It's all over the secured channels. Mercer is calling it a protective intervention, following a terrorist attack. He's positioned himself as their savior." Elias added his voice, carrying an unusual harmonic quality. "The Shiani ambassador is demanding their return, but Mercer claims the Order is the only entity that can guarantee their safety, given the current threat." "Meaning me," Jason concluded. Dr. Lin nodded. "Mercer has arranged a public ceremony at the Order's headquarters in New York tomorrow. He's going to reunite the princesses with their grandfather, under the Order's supervision, of course." "It's a trap," Mira stated flatly. "Obviously," Kato agreed. "But it's also our only chance to access the headquarters and the princesses." "I've been integrating more memories," Jason said. "The headquarters, it contains the central reset node, doesn't it? The quantum fulcrum that Alexander Cole established to maintain balance across all systems." The others exchanged surprised glances. "His integration is even further along than you suggested," Dr. Lin murmured to Mira. Yes, Jason. The central node remains there, though Mercer has corrupted its purpose using it to enforce control rather than maintain balance. Jason turned the dragon pendant Hanako had given him over in his fingers, feeling a resonance with it that went beyond the physical. If we can access the node, we can implement a true reset, restore the order to its original purpose. Easier said than done, Kato cautioned. Headquarters security is impenetrable. Quantum shields, neural scramblers, biological scanners, and that's just the outer perimeter. But not impossible. Elias said, his strange eyes fixed on Jason. Not for one who carries the Founder's pattern. The systems were designed to recognize that signature even after generations. Which is precisely why Mercer wants to eliminate you, Dr. Lin added. You are the key that could undo everything he's built. And the princesses, Jason asked. How do they fit into this plan? The Shiani consciousness matrices were based on the Order's original quantum architecture, Mira explained. When you access those backdoor functions, you inadvertently created a resonance between their consciousness and the Founder's patterns in your DNA. They've essentially become secondary keys. All four of you together at the central node would create a quantum resonance cascade that could reset the entire system, Dr. Lin said, excitement creeping into her voice. It's brilliant, a safeguard none of us recognized until now. So we need to infiltrate the most secure facility on Earth, rescue 3 alien princesses, access a quantum node at the heart of a corrupt interplanetary peacekeeping force, and trigger a system-wide reset. Jason shook his head. No pressure. We have one advantage, Elias said quietly. Mercer doesn't know how far your awakening has progressed. He believes you're still largely unaware of your potential. Which means we have the element of surprise. Kato concluded, a predatory smile spreading across his face. I like those odds. As the group began discussing infiltration strategies, Jason found himself drifting into the genetic memories once more. He saw the Order as it was meant to be, guardians of balance, protectors of both biological and digital evolution. He saw Alexander Cole and the other founders creating a system that would outlast them, ensuring that neither realm could dominate the other. And he saw the corruption that had gradually twisted that noble purpose, turning protectors into controllers, balance into stagnation. I can do this, he said, suddenly cutting through the tactical discussion. I need to do this, not just for myself or the princesses, but for everything the Order was meant to protect. The others fell silent, recognizing the change in his voice, the authority of a founder echoing through generations. Then let's prepare, Mira said simply. We have a long night ahead of us, and tomorrow we reset the balance. The Order of Reset's headquarters in New York was an imposing structure, a perfect black cube floating 30 meters above the ground, with no visible entrances or windows. For most citizens passing beneath it, the headquarters was simply another mysterious government building. Its purpose, known only vaguely as interplanetary security. Jason, still disguised thanks to Hanako's quantum mask, stood in the plaza directly below the cube, surrounded by hundreds of spectators who had gathered for the public ceremony. Massive holographic displays showed the interior of the cube, where Kane Mercer stood on a stage alongside the 3 Shiani princesses and their grandfather, Ambassador Krelthun. Today marks a triumph of interplanetary cooperation. Mercer was saying, his voice amplified throughout the plaza. Following the terrorist attack on the Shiani Earth Science Enclave, the Order has worked tirelessly to ensure the safety of our honored guests. The camera panned to the princesses. They appeared physically unharmed, but stood unnaturally still, their expressions blank. Ambassador Krelthun, by contrast, looked furious despite his diplomatic smile. They're being controlled. Jason sub-vocalized the words, picked up by the microscopic communicator attached to his larynx. Neural suppression field. I can see the quantum fluctuations around their heads. Confirmed, came Dr. Lin's voice through his earpiece. She was positioned at a cafe across the plaza, monitoring energy signatures. Localized field affecting only the princesses. Remember the plan, Mira added, from her position near one of the support pylons, beneath the cube. We need to get you inside when they open the transport tube for the ambassador's departure. Jason fingered the dragon pendant around his neck, now modified to serve as a quantum key that would help him interface with the order systems. I remember. Primary objective is reaching the central node with at least one of the princesses to initiate the resonance cascade. Movement on the stage. Kato alerted them from his sniper position on a nearby rooftop. They're preparing to end the ceremony. On the holographic displays, Mercer was guiding the ambassador and princesses toward what appeared to be a ceremonial archway. And now, we bid farewell to our distinguished guests, who will be returning to their embassy under our protection. The archway glowed, revealing itself as the entrance to a transport tube that would connect the floating cube to the ground. Stand by. Elias warned from his position inside the plaza's security center, which he had infiltrated hours earlier. Preparing diversion in 3, 2, 1. Suddenly, every holographic display in the plaza flickered, then changed to show images of the attack on the Shiani facility, but from a very different perspective than the official narrative. The footage clearly showed Order forces firing first, attacking scientists, destroying data. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Mercer's voice could be heard desperately ordering technicians to restore the proper feed, but Elias's hack held firm. Transport tube activating, Dr. Lin reported. Energy signature consistent with quantum displacement. You'll have a 3-second window, Jason. Jason moved through the crowd toward the base of the nearest pylon, where the transport tube would materialize. As he walked, he felt a strange sensation. The genetic memories were no longer just memories, but had fully integrated with his consciousness. Alexander Cole's knowledge, experience, and purpose had become his own, not replacing, but enhancing who he was. The air before him shimmered, and a transparent tube appeared connecting the ground to the floating cube. Inside, he could see the ambassador and princesses beginning their descent. Now, Mira commanded. Jason touched the dragon pendant, activating the quantum key. The tube's security field recognized the founder's signature and created a small aperture, just large enough for him to slip through. He stepped into the tube alongside the descending party, the aperture sealing instantly behind him. Ambassador Krelthun noticed him immediately, his eyes widening in recognition, despite the disguise. Founder, the ambassador whispered too low for the order guards accompanying them to hear. The princesses remained blank-faced, the neural suppression field preventing them from recognizing him. Jason gave the ambassador a slight nod, then pretended to be startled by his surroundings, playing the role of a confused civilian who had accidentally entered the transport. "Hey, how did you get in here?" demanded one of the guards, raising his weapon. "I don't know," Jason stammered, feigning panic. "I was just walking and suddenly—" "Security breach in transport tube CO," the guard reported into his communicator. "Civilian intrusion." "Bring them all to detainment," came the reply. "Process the civilian, then remove them." The guard grabbed Jason's arm roughly. "You picked the wrong transport to wander into Citizen." As they reached the bottom of the tube, the plaza was in chaos. The unauthorized footage continued to play on the holographic displays, showing order atrocities across multiple worlds. Protest chants had begun among the crowd. Perfect timing, Elias, Jason thought as he allowed himself to be marched along with the ambassador and princesses toward a security entrance beneath the cube. Once inside, they were led down a sterile white corridor to a detention area. The ambassador was escorted to one room, the princesses to another, and Jason to a third. "Wait here," the guard instructed Jason. "Identity verification officers will process you shortly." As soon as the door closed, Jason activated his neural implant, now freed from court restrictions thanks to Mira's modifications. "I'm in," he subvocalized. "Detention level East Quadrant." "Guards are responding to the plaza situation," Elias informed him. "Security is reduced inside. You have approximately 7 minutes before identity verification arrives. Jason examined the room quickly. Standard detention cell, but with one crucial feature: a neural interface panel designed to process detainees. Exactly what he needed. He placed his hand on the panel, simultaneously touching the dragon pendant to it. "Initiating Founder's override," he murmured. The panel flickered, then displayed a message: "Genetic pattern recognized. Founder protocol activated. Welcome, Alexander Cole. I need to access the princess's detention cell and disable the neural suppression field," Jason instructed the system. "Request processed. Warning action contradicts current order protocols. Override. Authorization Quantum Dragon Alpha." The system paused, then responded: "Override accepted. Neural suppression field deactivated. Adjacent cell door unlocked." Jason slipped out of his cell and into the corridor, which was mercifully empty. He moved quickly to the door, where the princesses were being held, and entered. All three Shiani women blinked in confusion as the neural field lifted, their awareness returning. Tuan, the warrior princess, immediately moved into a defensive stance. "It's me," Jason said quickly. "Jason Cole." Celia studied him intently, her tendrils shifting in recognition. "The quantum mask obscures your appearance, but not your neural signature. What are you doing here?" "Rescuing you, apparently," he replied. "Though I need your help to complete my actual mission." "Which is?" Nora asked, speaking to him directly for the first time. Her voice was melodious with subtle harmonics that his translator couldn't fully capture. "Resetting the order. Restoring balance." He touched his chest, where the tattoo lay beneath his disguise. "I carry the Founder's pattern, and you three now share a quantum resonance with it. Together, we can access the central node and implement a true reset." "The symbol on your chest," Tuan said, her hand moving to her weapon by reflex. "The dragon. It appeared in my consciousness matrix after the disruption. I thought it was corruption, but it was recognition." "Exactly." Jason glanced at the door. "We don't have much time. Will you help me?" The three princesses exchanged looks, communicating in some silent way that went beyond words. "The order has betrayed its purpose," Celia finally said. "We have seen their true nature. If you can restore balance, we will assist." "Our grandfather," Nora asked. "In another detention cell. He'll be safer there until this is done." Jason activated his communicator. "Mira, we're proceeding to Phase 2. The princesses are with me." "Understood," came the reply. "Kato and Dr. Lin are creating a diversion at the south entrance. Elias has locked down the security protocols. You should have a clear path to the central core." Jason turned to the princesses. "We need to reach the heart of the headquarters, the quantum fulcrum where all systems converge. I can lead us there, but we may encounter resistance." Tuan drew her ceremonial weapon, which hummed with surprising energy. "Let them come. I have been awaiting an opportunity to test Mercer's forces." "Violence should be a last resort," Celia cautioned. "If we're to restore balance, we should embody it." "Balance doesn't mean pacifism, sister," Tuan retorted. "Sometimes force is necessary to restore equilibrium." Both perspectives have merit. Nora mediated, her role as the emotional center of the trio becoming clear. "We should be prepared for conflict but seek harmony where possible." Jason found himself smiling, despite the gravity of their situation. The princesses embodied different aspects of balance, thought, emotion, action, complementing each other, and seemingly his own awakened purpose. "Follow me," he said, leading them back into the corridor. "And stay close. We're about to find out just how much of the Founder's access I've inherited." They moved through the detention level without incident, Jason using his newfound connection to the Order's systems to guide them past security checkpoints and surveillance nodes. The deeper they went into the headquarters, the more the architecture changed, moving from sterile white corridors to spaces that seemed to exist partially in quantum flux walls, shimmering between states of matter. The barrier between physical and digital realms thins as we approach the core. Jason explained memories that were not originally his, providing the knowledge. The central node exists in both states simultaneously, a quantum superposition that allows it to influence both biological and digital evolution. Fascinating, Celia murmured, her scientific curiosity evident. The Shiani have theorized such structures, but never successfully implemented them. They reached an imposing doorway that seemed to shift between solid matter and energy. Beyond it lay their goal, the central node. "This will recognize my genetic signature," Jason said, placing his hand on the quantum fluid surface of the door. "But I'll need all three of you to complete the resonance pattern." The princesses positioned themselves around him, each placing a hand near his on the door. As they did, Jason felt a strange connection forming between them, not romantic or even purely mental, but a quantum entanglement at the most fundamental level of existence. The door recognized the pattern and dissolved, revealing a vast chamber beyond. At its center floated a structure that defied conventional geometry, a crystalline formation that seemed to fold in on itself, infinitely existing in more dimensions than the human eye could perceive. "The central node," Jason breathed. "The quantum fulcrum that balances all systems." They stepped into the chamber, the door re-solidifying behind them. As they approached the central node, its complex structure began to respond to their presence, parts of it rotating and aligning toward them. "Stop right there!" commanded a familiar voice. Kane Mercer stood on the opposite side of the node, his scarred face contorted with rage. He was flanked by a dozen order guards, all with weapons trained on Jason and the princesses. "I underestimated you, Cole," Mercer said, circling around to face them directly. "Or should I say founder? The genetic memories have fully integrated, haven't they?" "They have," Jason confirmed. "I remember everything now, what the order was meant to be, what you've twisted it into." "I've adapted it to reality," Mercer snapped. "Your precious balance was a fantasy. Evolution demands dominance. The strong prevail, the weak perish. That is the true natural order." "You've corrupted the foundation of the order," Celia accused. "You've used its power to control rather than protect." Mercer laughed coldly. "Control is protection, princess. Ask your grandfather. The Shiani understand the necessity of hierarchy." "We understand balance," Tuan countered, her weapon raised. "Something you have forgotten." "Enough talk," Mercer gestured to his guards. "Kill them. Kill them all. The Founder's line ends here, and these Shiani royals will become martyrs who tragically died in a terrorist attack." The guards raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the central node pulsed with energy. The crystalline structure began rotating more rapidly, responding to Jason's presence. "You're too late, Mercer," Jason said calmly. "The node has already recognized me. The reset has begun." "Impossible!" Mercer lunged forward, drawing his own weapon. "The protocols require direct contact with the core. You haven't even touched it yet." Jason smiled. "The protocols were written by Alexander Cole, by me, in a sense. Did you really think I wouldn't build in safeguards against exactly this kind of corruption?" The node's rotation increased energy, cascading through its structure in waves of blinding light. The guards hesitated, uncertain what was happening. "Fire!" Mercer screamed. "Kill them now!" Several guards obeyed their weapons, discharging energy blasts toward Jason and the princesses. But the blasts never reached their targets, instead being absorbed by the node's expanding energy field. The true protocol activates when a founder and 3 quantum-resonant beings are present in the chamber, Jason explained, almost conversationally. "No physical contact required. That was misdirection protection against usurpers like you." Mercer howled with rage and fired his own weapon directly at Jason. This time, Princess Tuan moved with blinding speed, deflecting the blast with her ceremonial weapon, which now glowed with the same energy as the node. "You are unbalanced, Mercer," Tuan stated. "You cannot prevail against harmony." The node's energy field continued to expand, engulfing first Jason and the princesses, then Mercer and his guards. Within the field, Jason felt a profound connection to everything, every system, every consciousness matrix, every quantum decision point across the network of worlds the Order oversaw. "What are you doing?" Mercer demanded, his voice tinged with fear for the first time. "Stop this." "I'm not doing anything," Jason replied. "The node is assessing balance across all systems. It's doing what it was designed to do, what you prevented it from doing for decades." The crystalline structure at the heart of the node now rotated so rapidly it appeared as a perfect sphere of light. Streams of quantum data flowed through the energy field, touching each person present, reading their patterns, their intentions, their balance. Mercer collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. "No, you can't. The power. I won't let you take it." "It was never yours to hold," Nora said softly, her empathic abilities clearly sensing the shift occurring within the node. "Power without balance corrupts. Balance without power is ineffective. Both must exist in harmony." The guards had lowered their weapons, many of them now, staring in wonder at the node as its assessment touched their minds, reminding them of their original purpose. With a final blinding pulse of energy, the node completed its reset. The energy field contracted, returning to the crystalline structure, which gradually slowed its rotation until it once again appeared as the complex, multidimensional object it had been. Silence fell over the chamber. Mercer remained on his knees, his expression blank, his cybernetic enhancements dark and lifeless. The guards stood at attention, but their posture had changed, less aggressive, more vigilant. "What happened?" Celia asked, her tendrils moving with curiosity. "The energy signatures have been completely recalibrated." The reset removed the corruption from the Order's systems, Jason explained, feeling the knowledge flow from his integrated memories. The node evaluated each consciousness connected to the network and rebalanced their access privileges according to their balance quotient. Mercer, Tuan, prodded the kneeling figure with the tip of her weapon. "Alive, but reset to base parameters," Jason said. "His access privileges have been revoked. He's just a man now, no more command over the Order's systems than any civilian." The guards turned toward Jason, as one then knelt in a gesture of respect. "The Order recognizes the Founder's return," said the lead guard, her voice steady. "We await your guidance to restore our true purpose." Jason felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle he had been prepared to wear through generations of genetic memory. "Rise," he commanded. The Order of Resets returns to its founding principle, maintaining balance between biological and digital evolution. Neither realm shall dominate the other. Both shall be protected to evolve according to their nature. As the guards rose, the chamber door dissolved once more, admitting Mira, Cato, Dr. Lin, and Elias, along with Ambassador Krelthun, who had apparently been freed during the reset. "It worked," Mira said, her eyes bright with emotion. "The quantum cascade has reset systems across 17 worlds. Reports are already coming in, digital oligarchies collapsing, biological suppression protocols shutting down. Balance is returning," Elias confirmed, his harmonic voice resonating with the still active energy of the node. Ambassador Krelthun approached his granddaughters, checking each of them for injury before turning to Jason. "You have fulfilled the prophecy," the ambassador said formally. "The quantum dragon returns to restore harmony when imbalance threatens all realms." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Prophecy? There was no prophecy in Alexander Cole's memories." The ambassador's expression turned slightly sheepish. "Perhaps prophecy is too strong a term. Contingency plan might be more accurate. The Shiani were entrusted with watching for signs of the Founder's return. When your neural signature appeared in our systems, we recognized it immediately." "So the marriage clause," Jason began. "A diplomatic necessity," the ambassador confirmed. "But also a means to bring your genetic pattern into our lineage, ensuring the Founder's wisdom would never again be lost. The universe requires balance keepers, Founder Cole." Jason looked at the three princesses who were watching this exchange, with expressions ranging from curiosity, Celia, to amusement, Nora, to grudging respect, Tuan. "I'm still legally obligated to marry them, aren't I?" he asked. "The treaty remains in effect," the ambassador acknowledged. Though perhaps now that its true purpose has been fulfilled, we might renegotiate terms. Actually, Celia interjected, stepping forward. I believe the marriage still serves a valuable purpose. The quantum resonance between us and Founder Cole has proven remarkably effective. Such a connection should be maintained and studied. For scientific purposes only, of course, Nora added, with a small smile that suggested her interests might extend beyond mere science. And strategic alliance. Tuan contributed pragmatically. The Order will need Shiani support to re-establish its true mission across all systems. Jason found himself laughing despite everything they'd just experienced. Are you three actually arguing in favor of this arrangement now? The princesses exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Balance requires diverse perspectives, Celia stated simply. And diverse bonds, Nora added. And strong allies, Tuan concluded. Ambassador Krelthun spread his hands in a gesture of acceptance. It appears my granddaughters have reached their own consensus, Founder Cole. Will you honor the treaty? Jason looked around the chamber at Mercer's defeated form, at the reset node pulsing with renewed purpose, at his allies, who had helped him rediscover his legacy, and at the three remarkable beings, who had, against all odds, become partners in restoring balance to the Order. I will, he said finally. Not because of a treaty or a court verdict, but because it's the right balance. The Shiani Royal Hall was a marvel of architecture that blended biological and digital elements. Seamlessly, living plants grew alongside crystalline data structures. Water flowed through channels that also carried quantum information streams, and light played across surfaces that shifted between physical and energy states. The wedding ceremony, or bonding ritual as the Shiani called it, had drawn representatives from 17 worlds, all eager to witness the union between the returned founder and the Shiani princesses. The symbolic importance was lost on no one human and alien biological and digital past and future all in balance. Jason stood before the assembled dignitaries in robes that incorporated both Earth and Shiani design elements, the quantum dragon tattoo on his chest, now exposed as a symbol of his role. Beside him, the three princesses wore complementary attire, each reflecting their individual aspects while maintaining a unified appearance. Ambassador Krelthun, serving as ceremonial officiant, raised his hands for silence. Today, we witness more than a diplomatic union, he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the Great Hall. We witness the restoration of balance. For too long, our worlds have drifted toward imbalance, some favoring digital ascension, others clinging to biological primacy. The order of resets created to maintain harmony between these realms had itself fallen into imbalance. He gestured to Jason. The return of Founder Cole, carrying forward the wisdom of his ancestor through genetic memory, has reset the scales. And now, this union between our houses ensures that balance will be maintained for generations to come. From her place in the audience, Mira watched with satisfaction. As a creation of the original founders, her purpose had always been to guide and protect until balance could be restored. In Jason, she had found not just the genetic continuation of Alexander Cole, but a worthy successor in his own right, a human who understood the importance of harmony between realms. The ceremony proceeded with exchanges of vows that incorporated quantum entanglement, not just words, but actual linking of consciousness patterns that would bind Jason and the princesses at a fundamental level while preserving their individual identities. When the final quantum bond was established, the Great Hall erupted in celebration. Representatives from worlds that had been at odds for decades now mingled freely, united in their recognition that balance served all. Later, during the reception, Jason found a moment alone with Mira. What happens now? He asked her. With the order reset, the balance restoring across systems, is your purpose fulfilled? Mira smiled, her partially mechanical nature more evident now that she no longer needed to maintain her fully human appearance. My purpose evolves as all things should. The reset is just the beginning. Maintaining balance is an ongoing process, not a single event. And your role in it? I remain a guardian of balance, but perhaps now more as an advisor than a protector. She glanced meaningfully at the three princesses, who were engaged in diplomatic conversations across the hall. You have new protectors now, and they are formidable in their own rights. Jason followed her gaze, studying each of his new partners. Celia, with her scientific brilliance, was deep in discussion with Dr. Lin about quantum consciousness theory. Nora, the empathic center, moved among the guests, easing tensions and building connections between formerly adversarial delegates. Tuan stood vigilant near the order representatives, her warrior's stance softened, but still conveying her readiness to defend the new balance. They're remarkable, he acknowledged, each so different yet complementary. As balance requires, Mira nodded. Your genetic ancestor knew that no single perspective could maintain true balance. That's why the original Council of Founders had 7 members from different species and traditions. Speaking of perspectives, Jason said, lowering his voice, have you heard the news from the medical center? Mira's eyes widened slightly. Already, that was faster than expected. Apparently, the quantum resonance between humans and Shiani created ideal conditions for genetic compatibility, Jason explained. 3 embryos, 1 with each princess. The physicians are calling it a miracle of quantum biology. Not a miracle, Mira corrected gently. Balance. Life finds harmonious pathways when artificial barriers are removed. Ambassador Krelthun approached them, bowing respectfully to both. Founder Cole, the Order representatives request your presence. They wish to formalize the new protocols for system monitoring. Jason nodded. Of course. Duty calls even at my own wedding. As he moved to join the Order representatives, he noticed a subtle disturbance in the air near the Great Hall's central fountain, a flickering, as if reality itself were thin in that location. Mira had noticed it too. A quantum fold, she murmured, a thinning between dimensions. Is it dangerous? Jason asked, his hand instinctively moving toward the dragon pendant he still wore. Not dangerous, she replied thoughtfully, but significant. The reset has restored more than just the order systems. It's reawakening connections between realms that have been dormant for centuries. The fold shimmered briefly, showing what appeared to be another version of the hall, populated by shadowy figures, who moved with purpose, but remained indistinct. The multiverse stirs, Ambassador Krelthun observed. Balance in one realm affects all others. Something to address tomorrow, I think, Jason decided, watching as the fold gradually closed the glimpse of another reality fading back into normal space. Today, we celebrate what we've accomplished. Tomorrow we face whatever new challenges balance requires. As he rejoined his brides, and they moved together to meet the Order representatives, Jason felt the weight of his inherited purpose, balanced by the strength of the new bonds he had formed. Whatever came through that fold, or any other challenge the universe presented, they would face it together. Human and alien, biological and digital, past and future, in perfect dynamic balance. The quantum dragon had returned, and this time its wisdom would not be lost.